Good evening. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Caldwell County Department of Social Services Board meeting. Today is Tuesday, August 25th, 2020, and it's 5 o'clock. I guess first on our agenda is going to be the swearing in of a new board member, and that'll be done, new board member, Jill Duffy, and that'll be done by the Honorable Wayne Rash, Caldwell County Register of Deeds.
Good afternoon, board members.
Good afternoon.
Good to see each of you, and thank you for the opportunity to come and administer the oath of office to our newest board member. So, Ms. Duffy, if you will, place your left hand there on the Bible and raise your right hand, and I'm going to read some statements to you, and if you agree with those, just say, I do, okay? Do you, Jill Duffy, solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States, so help me God?
I do.
Okay. Do you, Jill Duffy, further solemnly and sincerely swear that you will be faithful and bear true allegiance to the state of North Carolina and to the constitutional powers and authorities which are or may be established for the government thereof, that you will endeavor to support, maintain, and defend the Constitution of said state, not inconsistent with the Constitution of the United States, to the best of your knowledge and ability, so help you God?
I do.
Okay. Do you, Jill Duffy, further swear that you will well and truly execute the duties of the office as a member of the Caldwell County Board of Social Services according to law, so help you God?
I do.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
You're sworn in.
We'll take just a moment and let Ms. Duffy get seated. And Wayne, we appreciate you doing that. You've done this many a time through the years, and you probably know that by heart, don't you?
Most of it, yes.
Yeah. All right. So once a year, we have the opportunity to re-elect our officers and for the board. And I will turn that over to our director, Will Wakefield.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to entertain a motion that we open the floor for nominations for chairperson. So if someone would make a motion that we open the floor, please.
I move that we open the floor.
All right, can I get a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, and so now the floor is open for nominations for chairperson.
I nominate Donnie Potter as chairperson.
All right, nomination for Donnie Potter. Any other nominations? All right, can I get a motion? Hearing none, can I get a motion that we close the floor for nominations?
Do you need a second?
Well, we'll vote.
Okay.
I'm just going to close the floor and then we'll jump to
Gotcha.
that.
I'll make a motion, we close the
All right.
nominations.
Can I get a second?
I'll second.
All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, so we have one nomination for chairperson, Mr. Donnie Potter. So if, could we have a ayes for yay for Mr. Potter for chairperson?
Aye.
All right, any opposed? Nay, all right. Mr. Potter, we appreciate you continuing to be our chairperson, and thank you for your service this past year. I will let you carry on for our nomination for vice chairperson.
Absolutely. It's a true honor to serve, and I appreciate the board selecting me again to serve the next year. Do I need to open the floor for vice chair? So I'll make a motion, we open the floor for nomination for vice chair.
You need a second.
Need a second. Okay. So I've got a motion and a second to open the floor. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? All right, so the floor is open. I would like to, I guess now we'll make nominations for vice chair, and I would nominate Ms. Trillanis as our vice chair. Any more nominations? Okay, I'll need a motion to close the floor for nominations.
I'll make a motion.
Need a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, motion carries. So we have a nomination of Ms. Trilla, and we need to ask for a vote or ask for a motion to appoint Ms. Trillanis as the vice chair for the coming year.
I'll make a motion to appoint Joe.
Second?
I'll second.
Got a second by Ms. Duffy. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All opposed? Congratulations, Ms. Annis.
And same to you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you both for agreeing to serve in that way.
Absolutely. We will, I guess, we got that out of the way now. It's always a lot of fun trying to get through that, so we'll move on as our agenda. We need to do the Pledge of Allegiance and invocation, and if you will, please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Will, would you like to lead us?
I will, and then if you'll remain standing, and we'll have our invocation afterwards. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us pray. God, we thank you for this beautiful day. We thank you for this time that we can gather and do the work of this agency and this county. And thank you for each of these board members and the time and interest that they have given to this agency and for our staff. And God, we just pray that you would bless this meeting and bless the decisions that are made and the reports that are given. And we just pray that you would guide us as an agency, that we would serve those who are in need, that we would serve those who are struggling. We know that there are families, people who have lost their jobs, people who are struggling in a lot of different ways in our community, and we want to be of service to them. And we just pray that you would guide us and help us to assist them. In your name I pray. Amen.
Amen. So before we get started in the agenda, I didn't need to go back a little bit and want to congratulate Ms. Duffy on being seated as the Social Services Board. We appreciate your willingness to serve, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much.
I think you'll enjoy it, and I think you'll get a lot out of it.
I'm excited about it. Thanks.
Fantastic. Next on our agenda is going to be the, I need a motion for the amendment, is there, on the agenda, amendments of the Board of Director, motion to approve. Number 5.
I move that we accept it as written.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Need approval. Next on the agenda is approval for the minutes. Need a motion to approve the minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes as written.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, number 7 on our agenda is going to be reports. We'll get started with the infamous, world-famous Mitch Laws, our child support supervisor.
If only that was true. Good evening. My name is Mitch Laws. I supervise the child support program for the Department of Social Services. I'd like to thank you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board, for giving me an opportunity this evening to talk with you a little bit about our program, to share some of our success and accomplishments, and as well some of the challenges that we've had over the last few months with COVID. Our program is staffed with 7 child support agents, 1 lead agent, 1 administrative assistant, and 1 supervisor, for a total of 10 staff members. Our program would be considered specialized in that we are set up in 3 areas: establishment, enforcement, and interstate. Our child support program offers assistance in 5 different areas: the location of a non-custodial parent, the establishment of paternity for children born out of wedlock, the establishment of a child support obligation, the collection and distribution of that support collected, and the enforcement of a child support obligation. Our program is not authorized to assist in some areas that may seem similar to child support, such as custody, visitation, and property settlements. In addition to the child support program, private attorneys as well can assist members of the public as well with child support. At one point, the clerk of court was able to do that, but they can no longer do it due to some legislative changes that's been made in the past. One of the cool things about child support that I think is kind of cool anyway is that regardless of your income levels, you're eligible for child support. The only thing you got to have is responsibility and care of a child. So we receive our cases generally through a referral process, and that comes from Work First Family Assistance, Family and Children's Medicaid, North Carolina Foster Care, and Caldwell DSS custody cases. We also get applications from non-public assistant clients that walk in, fill out an application, pay a $25 application fee, and we administer our services to them as well. And for $25, you get a pretty good bang for your buck. You get an agent that establishes that order, one that oversees the collection of the money, and you also get an attorney that's, your advocate for court in the event you have to end up there. It's kind of hard to hire an attorney for $25. But anyway, so you get a pretty good bang for your buck for the non-public assistant clients. In order to obtain a child support obligation, first thing we have to do is locate the non-custodial parent. And once we've done that, we will establish an appointment time for them to come in and sit down and talk with an agent. We do have to verify addresses and employment and things of that nature. Usually our best source of information is the custodial parent, the one that's actually making application. But in the event that they don't have any information or they don't know any whereabouts of this non-custodial parent, we do have interfaces with automated systems that report back to us with information. The Wildlife Commission, the SBI, Federal Parent Locate, Employment Security Commission, Department of Motor Vehicles, Department of Corrections, the Department of Revenue, the IRS, our food stamps information system, financial institutions, and new hire. If someone's employed, they report to new hire, that employee reports to new hire reports to us. But once we've generated postmaster letters and got the addresses verified and employment verifications and got their income levels verified, we do schedule them an appointment to come in and sit down and talk with us. The first thing we have to do is determine if paternity is at issue for that child or children. If the mother and father were not married and the dad's name's not on the birth certificate, we have to establish that paternity before we can pursue any kind of financial obligation. The father can admit to that paternity and sign an affidavit of parentage. DNA testing's available. Our staff generally collect that sample and send it in, but due to COVID, we have a phlebotomist coming in from LabCorp once a month now to collect that sample and from mama and daddy and baby and sending that into the lab. We get those results back, and the probability of paternity is discussed with both mom and dad. And at that time, if the dad is the father, then we would sign an affidavit of parentage with him, as well as discuss the financial responsibilities as well. The amount that a payer pays is not determined by me or my staff. That's determined by the North Carolina Child Support Guidelines. These guidelines are established by your chief district court judges across the state. They're based on the parent's ability to pay and the needs of the children. They take into account both parents' income, any children not related to the case that's in the home of each parent, any other child support payments that that parent may pay, any daycare expenses, insurance cost, and extraordinary expenses. That's what factors into a child support worksheet. Once that is determined, we give that individual an opportunity to sign a voluntary support agreement in the office if they choose. If they don't, then we refer the case to our legal folks, and they complete a civil complaint, and we serve them, and then that's resolved in court. So once we get the order, our establishment folks will key that into our child support system. It's called ACTS, Automated Collection and Tracking System. ACTS then refers the case to the enforcement worker. The enforcement worker is responsible for the collection and distribution of those payments. one thing I always like to tell folks is just because you get an order doesn't mean he's going to pay. That means you have an order. There'll be times that he pays his order. There'll be times that you'll get partial payments. There'll be times that he doesn't pay at all. And that's what the enforcement agent has to identify, those cases that are not paying. And once those are identified, then they have to use the tools they have available to them to enforce that. Wage withholding is obviously our best, most effective way to collect payments, and that's simply issuing a wage garnishment to the employer and having it withdrew from his check and mailed in. Other entities that we can use wage withholding for is unemployment benefits, workman's comp claims, and Social Security benefits, and VA retirement benefits. Some other enforcement remedies that we have is filing court actions against the non-custodial parents, such as show causes, order of arrest, liens on real and personal property. We can intercept federal and state income taxes, as well as lottery winnings. We can also, by statute, we can take professional and driver's license can be revoked. Is it hot in here? Is it just me?
No, it's hot in here.
I'm sweating like crazy.
You're just a little stressed out
I've been
there.
outside all day,
Well, I can tell you've been in the sun, so you should be feeling pretty well right now.
sweating like crazy. Anyway,
No, it's
sorry.
hot in here.
But anyway, they can revoke their driver's license and a professional license. We can put liens on bank accounts and their credit union accounts. Another effective way for us is passports. A lot of people love to travel, maybe not in today's time, but generally passports are a good source of collections for us. If someone's over $2,500 delinquent in their child support, then their passport's denied, and so they have to pay that down before they can actually get their passport back. And then the other area that we are specialized in is interstate. When one parent resides outside the state of North Carolina, if mom lives here, dad lives in Virginia, we have an order in North Carolina, we can send our North Carolina order to Virginia, ask them to register the North Carolina order there, and enforce that order for us. The same as Virginia can send theirs to us and ask us to do the same. The interstate process it's got more steps in it. It's a little more complex. It is a federal program. It's called UIFSA. It's a Uniform Interstate Family Support Act that all states entered into an agreement with, that we would take all these cases and administer them as we would our own. And so, the challenge with that is you have to provide these folks the same service that you would for any local case that you have here. The interstate process, while it is effective, it does take a little longer to get going sometimes. For some accomplishments, with our program, we served 3,274 children. We established 179 new child support obligations last year. We established 194 paternities for children that were born out of wedlock. We modified 272 child support obligations. We issued 5,322 enforcement actions. We intercepted $524,798.17 in state and federal income taxes. We were able to collect $5,417,213, which was 101% of our state collection goal. So, that's a big number when you think about $5 million. That's a good shot to the economy here.
Absolutely.
With the parents that spend the money back in the community. Our cases under order, our Our goal was 87.9, and we finished the year at 86.3. We established paternity. Our goal was 100. We finished the year at 103.9, and 85.4 of all of our cases have medical insurance in them. So that's some pretty good accomplishments, considering, with court, we didn't have court from March till June due to COVID.
Yep.
That was one of our challenges. And then when we did go back to court, we had to rework the whole way that we went about court. You can only get so many people in the courthouse. So now I get to stand outside and check people in and get their phone numbers. If we have room in the courthouse, they go in. If they don't, we ask them to go back to their vehicle. Once their space is available, I'll text them to come back to the courthouse and handle their case. If they're applying for an attorney, then I walk them through that process to get the attorney, and then they go to their vehicle and wait for the judge to make a ruling on it. There's really no standing around at the courthouse anymore. There's nobody out front. Usually you go by there and see people out front smoking and just hanging out.
Yep.
That don't happen anymore.
Well, I thought maybe you were getting that sun from the pontoon boat being on the lake, so really you're getting that sun from standing outside in front of the courthouse.
That's exactly right. I'd rather be on the lake.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But court's been a challenge. I think that it's taken everybody at the courthouse. Certainly, Jerry and his staff, the bailiffs, the clerk and her staff. It's been amazing that we've been able to work together and make this thing work.
That's great.
It's really a testament to all that are involved there. And at the end of the day, I think some of the folks actually like the way we do it now versus the way we used to do it. They'd rather sit in their car and wait rather than sit on the hard bench in the courthouse and wait. So for some, it's been nice to the change. For me, it's been hot, but I'm okay. I can take that.
I think COVID really has challenged us in more ways than one to
Absolutely.
find ways around our processes. And,
Yes.
I commend you guys for, working through that and
Yes.
trying to find the best way, the most efficient way to do
Yeah.
that. So,
Yeah, we've had to get out of the box. I mean,
Yeah.
it's way out of the box
Absolutely.
on how we would usually, go about our court day.
yeah.
But as well as the office, we don't get to see folks in our offices anymore. So we do have an interview room. We're fortunate enough to have that where we can meet with folks and be behind the sneeze guards and have our mask and have our seats 6 feet apart and, and feel protected. I know there's some other measures that's going into play, but it's nice to have somewhere that we can meet with folks and still get business done. But yes, COVID has been challenging, to say the least. But we're proud of our program's results. I think it speaks volumes to the commitment of our staff. And I want you guys to know that you got a good group. They work hard. They're proud of what they've accomplished. They're a resilient bunch. They don't have any quit in them, and I kind of like that about them. And I respect that. We understand that the success we had hasn't come totally on our back, but it's come with a collaboration of community partners. I mentioned earlier the Sheriff's Department, the Clerk's Office, the magistrates, the DAs, Lenoir PD and Hudson PD and Granite Falls Police Department, of course, the judges that hear the cases. It's a huge collaboration of efforts to get there. And so we appreciate them for what they do. But, we want you to know that with your support and the support of the community partners, that we're going to strive to keep working hard and do our best for you. We hope to make you proud.
Well, you mentioned the great staff you have, but they wouldn't be who they are without you, Mitch, because you do a fantastic job, my friend. You've been doing it a long time, so that experience means a lot, and we appreciate what you do every day. And we are very fortunate to have the team we have that works in DSS, and I challenge you to continue to look outside the box and to look for ways that we can be, continue to be efficient and get the job done. I know you will, but you do a fantastic job, and you always have. And I know that here in the next, I don't know how many years it's going to be here, but it ain't going to be too awful long. You're going to be thinking about retirement, so we'd like to keep you around as long as we can.
Okay.
How long have you been? How long have you been over
Appreciate
there?
that.
How long have you been over there?
That didn't sound too convincing.
Say what?
How long have you been over there?
Well, I think I'm working on 22 years now, but I had 5
That's what
years with the state. and
I was thinking 25 or so is what I
Yeah.
had in my mind. So,
I think I've got a total of about 27 years right now,
yeah.
so.
Will, gotta.
Will's in
Gotta-
great hands.
You gotta
There's-
sweet. You gotta stay sweet with
great
him.
hands
You gotta keep plenty of sugar going that way so we keep him happy.
There's good hands there.
You do a great job, Mitch. Thank you so much.
I appreciate
Anybody got
you
any
guys.
questions for Mitch while he's here?
I want to ask about
Sure.
the passports. When are the people picked up? Are they en route?
Well,
somewhere? How does that work?
Usually if they're applying for a passport, that's when they're denied. I have had one guy that was actually in another country, used his passport, was okay to get there, but couldn't get back. So somebody had to make a big payment to be able to allow him back. So, but once the payment was made, then they lifted it. He was able to come back. But it's an interesting process because you never know.
You gonna track 'em
So my
down
thing
one
is,
way
don't
or
get
another.
$2,500 behind, you never have to worry about it.
That's right. That's right.
So, but anyway, yeah.
Any more questions? Thank you, Mitch.
all right.
Appreciate you, my friend.
Thank you, guys.
It's always good to see you. All right, next on our agenda is going to be our monthly updates, and we'll get started with the financial report by Mr. Chris Conley, our business officer.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Our financial report this month is a combined report, with the top half being the normal monthly report, the bottom half being a summary of our prior year budget. So in the monthly report, the reimbursements are noted in the left-hand column. And revenues received in July, for July, as well as prior year revenues totaled $757,510. To the far right of that number is the expense total for the month, which came in at $1,013,600. Bringing you back to the left-hand side of the page, under the reimbursement total, you'll see our county dollar expense during the month of July, which totaled $256,090. Moving into the highlights of our prior year, you see our expenses and revenues, the totals for the year. Expenses were $13,114,164. Revenues totaled $8,623,877. So our county portion, for our county dollar used in the prior year, came in at $4,287,287. To the far right of that number are the amounts we were actually budgeted for the fiscal year. And our county portion that was allocated to our department was $4,790,700. $273. Therefore, we came in at almost $300,000 under our county allocation for the year. Actually, $299,986. That number would have been much higher as we move into the next paragraph. We had reimbursements for June services, which were due back to the counties prior to the end of July, that were not received until the first week of August, after the county had closed out the prior year budget. That was a total of $392,641. So our underspending for the year would have been almost $700,000 had those reimbursements come in timely. And our county dollar utilized for the year would have been just under 4.1 million, or about 117,000 more than the previous year. So, but however, I mean, we did not get those reimbursements in prior year as we expected.
Right.
They went into the current year budget. Therefore, we did end up overspending in administration by just over $200,000 last year, because of that 392,000, 389 was intended for our administrative area of our budget. Again, overall, we underspent county allocation by about 300,000, but we did overspend administration by 201. So this is, with the late reimbursements, it's the same scenario that occurred in 2015. So this will affect us for about a 3-year period, because in the year we're in now, assuming all reimbursements are received timely, we'll end up with 13 months of revenue at this point next year.
Right.
So we're going to end the current year well under our county dollar. Then in the following year, we're only going to get 12 months of reimbursements. And we're going to way overspend what we're going to do this year. So we'll be talking about this for the next 3 years.
Yep.
Because in 2 years, it's why don't you look as good as you did last year?
Yep. Just remind me, you told me that. Yeah.
Because I've been through this once already.
Yeah. Was this COVID related? The money
No,
coming in?
no, it's
just
a
cycles.
state accounting function
It's a
where
cycle.
they don't release money to the counties timely,
Okay.
is my opinion.
Yeah. Well, they want to sit on it as long as they can,
Yeah.
I'm sure.
Could be COVID related this time, but it happens 6 out of 12 months every year, generally, where
Yeah.
they don't
So it's a
release the
cycle, yeah,
revenues.
kind of a cycle. Yeah.
Yeah,
I get it.
so,
Well, the good news is, I mean, overall, if I'm reading this correctly, you guys were, expenses were down, your revenues were higher. So
Yeah.
therefore, our overall budget was, you guys were under budget, which is
yeah.
always good to hear. When you're talking about, tax dollars being spent, and I know our citizens appreciate that. And you guys were, you managed the budget the way you're supposed to. You watched the pennies, you watched the dimes and nickels, and you were able to get the job done. So and especially in a very challenging year. So I commend you guys on being able to do that. You had a lot of stuff thrown at you from, probably about March till the end of the year, and so to still be able to come under budgets, that's pretty awesome. That's a great job.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot of work that goes into it, not just the accounting team, but,
Oh, absolutely. Well, I
a
think
lot-
it takes everybody's.
Yeah.
It's on everybody's. So.
yeah. I can cover the latter portion of the report if you want me to, or if you have other questions, I'll be happy to entertain them. As far as where we did underspend, that was primarily in child resources and adult resources. And both of those areas, the underspending was expected. We've underspent in those areas for several years simply because child resources in particular, we have a healthy budget for foster care room and board, currently more than what we know we need, but there's a cushion there to absorb any upswing in our foster care numbers. So we know going into the year, and we hope that we underspend in that area. That means our foster care numbers did not increase significantly.
How do we do on childcare money that we get? How do we end up for the year on that? That's always something I like to, I know we didn't have I know they cleared the wait list, but I don't like sending money back to the state if we don't have to.
Yeah, we didn't, simply because the state, when the pandemic set in, the state started paying the parent fees
Yep.
from the county's allocations. So basically, the state took all the underspending statewide and divvied it up to the counties
Yep.
in an effort to spend all the money, and I think statewide, they ended up spending 98 or 99% of it,
Oh, wow.
just
Good.
about all of it. Before the effects of the pandemic, we were on pace to likely spend all, if not even overspend a little bit.
And we're talking about, for the new board members, we're talking about the subsidy that the state gives to the daycare centers to keep kids in daycare centers there.
And one smart thing they did with some of that money was they allowed incentives to some of the centers to stay open. So they paid them a little bit more to stay open during this time, because a lot of centers, they were afraid, they were wanting to close, but at the same time, you had people who needed, we still needed childcare for, other people, essential employees and things like that. So that was, one of the smart things they did do with some of that money was incentivize some of those facilities to remain open and give them some extra dollars really to deal with what they were dealing with. So that was a good thing.
Good.
Any other questions or comments?
All right. If anybody ain't got no questions, we'll move on to the director's report. Mr. Will Wakefield. Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you, my friend. Keep up good work.
Currently, we have 3 positions that we are interviewing for. We've got one position that is remain frozen, but we have been able to recruit for those other 3, and then we did fill one of our past positions since our last meeting, so that was good. So we're moving along well in terms of being able to replace staff. One thing I did want to just mention to you for our older, experienced board members and our new board members, we've talked a lot in the past year about Medicaid and Medicaid audits. And so for our board members who've been here for the past year, we've talked about one of the a special audit, one of the newer audits that we've been going through all of last calendar year. And that was a Medicaid audit that was new. It was the first time that it's been done across the state, and we were luckily, I say luckily, tongue-in-cheek, we were one of the first 33 counties to go through that Medicaid audit. That was, as far as I know, the largest and the longest audit that we've ever been through. It took them 10 months to go through that audit. They chose, every month they would choose 20 cases, and our staff and our supervisors would work with the auditors each month to deal with those cases, to find the information that they needed finding, to answer questions. And so that took 10 months to get through that audit. We spent a lot of time, our staff, our supervisors, and Martha just spent a ton of time dealing with that audit. And that was kind of one of the things that we talked to the state a lot about was, we understand the need for audits, but at the same time, we need to be doing the work that we need to be doing and not always having to spend so much extra time dealing with audits. But this was an audit that the General Assembly had created a couple of years ago, and this was when it was first being implemented. So we were one of the first 33 counties to start that audit. We will go through this audit every 3 years. So the next 33 counties are currently in that audit, and then next year there'll be the last batch of counties, and then we will start over again. But I bring up this audit simply because, first of all, we've talked about it a lot for the past year. Second of all, we finally got our results back from it, and so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. And then the third thing is just to talk a little bit about, with our Medicaid audits, what happens when there is a payback. And because when we talk about paybacks, that's really important and something that's very serious when it comes to the counties. Because in the end, counties are totally responsible for any errors and any paybacks when it comes to Medicaid. And we understand that, Medicaid is a large program. It's medical insurance, and we all know that medical insurance is expensive, and those costs can be high, and so it's important that counties do the best job that they can do to make sure that we are administering those programs correctly. And then if there are findings or whatever, that money, that it does need to be repaid and corrections need to be made. So certainly, the audits are important. I think sometimes as a director and in talking with other directors and counties in general, we sometimes wish the audits were a little more streamlined, because there are multiple audits. They come from a lot of different sources, whether it's the state auditor, whether it's the General Assembly, whether it's the Division of Health Benefits, which is basically Medicaid. So they come from a lot of different places, a lot of different people looking at your records, but they're all doing it separately. It's not really done in a functional and streamlined process. And so it does take a lot of time and a lot of work from our staff to deal with those audits, and not just in Medicaid, but other areas. So in this audit, the two main areas that they looked at were whether or not we determined eligibility correctly, whether or not we gave someone access to Medicaid appropriately, and whether or not we denied someone inappropriately. So in looking at whether or not we gave someone Medicaid appropriately, what they considered passing was having a 96.7, I believe, %. So one of the first things that I think counties took a little bit of issue with was having to pass something at 96.7%, which is fairly high. That does not leave hardly any room for error. So that was certainly, that's been tough to deal with. Thankfully, in that first area, we did score 98%, so we were very proud of that, and our staff did a lot of hard work, and we appreciate them for all of the work that they've done. But getting that 98% was a high score, and so we were very, very proud of that. In the second area, we scored 94%, so we didn't quite reach the 96.7. We are, I think we're still happy with our score. We know we have some work to do, and just some little inconsistencies that we need to deal with, and we'll take care of that. But we still felt good about getting to that 94%. The part that we were, I'll say most happiest about in terms of the director, and I'm sure the staff as well, and for the county, when it comes to a payback, irregardless of how well you score, you could score 99.9%, but for that 1% where you may have had an error in a case, and when we talk about Medicaid and healthcare and all those types of things, that little 1%, it could be $1,000, it could be $35,000, it could be $50,000. So it doesn't matter whether or not you passed or not. Any finding where there was an overpayment, you still pay that back as a county. So for us, we had a $22 overpayment. So we paid our we'll be getting ready to pay our $22, what have you. And we
Need to find out whose check we need to take that out of. I'm just kidding.
I'll gladly pay that $22.
I'm just kidding.
So we were certainly happy about that, especially in this type of an audit. I spoke to some of the other counties, and in counties like any other groups, you don't always like to share where you maybe didn't do as well and that type of thing. And we're competitive. We are. We want to be the best and do the best. But in talking with some other directors, most counties had 200, 300, 400. There were a couple of counties that had 1,500, 2,000, 3,000, and there was I know of one county who shared that they did have a $35,000 overpayment, and I certainly wouldn't want to wish that on anyone because again, your best employee could have scored 99.9%, but because of, one little error in a very complicated program, somebody ended up going to the hospital and had some sort of major surgery, and now your county's having to pay that back. So I share that with you, certainly to say, we're certainly proud of what we did. We know we do have some work to do in a couple of areas, but at the same time, as we move forward, when we talk about audits, and sometimes you'll hear us kind of complain and kind of get antsy about audits, that's one of the reasons with some of our audits, and specifically Medicaid, if there's a finding and there was some serious medical issues within that finding, then the county is going to be responsible for that, regardless of how you performed in the rest of the audit. What counties have put forward to the state, and we've kind of been asking about this and pushed on it for a number of years now, and is to find some other way to score a county to say that, all right, if you scored at a higher percentage and you had a finding, well, then maybe you only pay a certain portion of that because, overall you did a pretty good job, as opposed to just, well, whatever that cost is, the county gets hit. Because if you can imagine some of these, much smaller counties, even smaller than we are, $35,000, $50,000, we can figure that out and find that in our budget. You get some other smaller counties, that's a heck of a lot of money for those counties. So, but anyway, I just kind of wanted to share how that works, and so, and going forward as we talk about our audits, and specifically with Medicaid, that, those are the things that we really get concerned about, are those paybacks, and that when our staff are preparing those files and looking over those files, we go back and if there's a finding, we go back and we recheck it, and if we find something wrong with it, we're heading back to the auditor to say, hey, wait a minute, you got this wrong. We're pretty intense in how we handle that, because it is important. So,
Well, I tell you, Will, we all know that that's a pretty big monster, pretty big complicated process and system. So for you guys to be 98% efficient, that's a heck of a job, and it's greatly appreciated. And I've told Will this a few months ago that, I'm extremely proud of the work that our DSS team does out there, and I think sometimes we don't really give enough credit to our employees and understanding the complicated process that they have to work in every day. It's not very simple. It's not very easy. So for you guys to come out of a 10-month audit being 98% efficient and us having to pay back $22, that's a hell of a job.
Yeah.
So I commend you on it, and I appreciate you. And we don't get a chance to talk to the staff too often, but if you will, please take that back to the staff and let them know how much we appreciate that.
That deserves a hand.
Yeah, it
doesn't
does. And I have to admit, I kind of thought this report might be pretty good because Will didn't tell me there was anything bad coming. So when he started talking about it, I was like, well, it's probably going to be a good report, because if it had been bad, I'd have known about it up front.
Yeah, we're talking $35,000. We had some other conversations.
Yeah, we'd have had some other conversations before tonight. You're right.
How did you rank with the other counties that were doing the audit at the same time?
I'm sorry,
Like-
how did we?
Rank with the other counties,
Well,
like would you be in the top
We
5?
really, we don't know. We don't get that information. I honestly was just kind of out there, putting that out to the other directors to say, hey, how did you do?
He was bragging.
How did it look? I mean,
bragging.
I was just curious.
Yeah.
As to what other people had to pay back, and,
So I do have a crazy question for you, and I think it's something that obviously I just don't know. So the ones that we miss and we didn't give the benefit where the benefit should be given, how does that get addressed with that particular client that didn't get the benefit they should have got?
right, the way they were handling this audit is they were pulling them, was it 2 months or a month? 2 months?
Like if, we're in the month of August, so they would have pulled the cases that were dispositioned in the month of July.
So
Okay.
basically, we would then correct.
That's what I was asking. So
Yeah.
it's not so far out that you don't have time to go back and fix
Right.
it. Okay, that's great. So the person might have not got the benefit today, but they got it 30 to 45 days later. Got it. Perfect. That's awesome. Any questions for Will on this report? Are you done there?
That's all for me. unless
I mean,
you
that's
have other
pretty good. So
questions. That's good.
we'll just leave that on a high note, right?
I think that's a good plan.
All right. Thank you, Will. Appreciate that. Next on our agenda is, we got the Seven Dwarfs tonight, and this is Sleepy. So she was talking about,
You're right.
she was tired earlier, so I had to pick on her a little bit.
I think it's the heat in here.
It is. It'll make you sleepy. But next on the agenda is Child Services Highlights. Ms. Kim Arnett, Program Administrator.
So, good afternoon. Welcome, Ms. Duffy, to the board. We look forward to
Thank you.
working with you. So for the past month, last month I talked about some audits and that the audits that Child Welfare is currently going through this week. So I won't talk a lot about that. But for the last month, what we've really been working on is back to school preparation for both of our units in Child Welfare, which would be permanency, so that's foster care and adoptions, and also Child Protective Services, and that's investigation assessments, and what is referred to as in-home or case management. So we've been doing some preparations in both those areas for our children in foster care. We've been working with the foster parents. We've also been talking with biological parents about what their options are and what each child needs. We have very few children who have significant underlying health issues, so that wasn't something that we had to be overly concerned about. There are a couple, and luckily those children were able to be virtual. And so the others, we have a blended, they are doing a blended schedule, so whatever their local county school system is doing. So that's what we've been working with our foster care unit. With our Child Protective Services unit, we've just been really trying to work on any kind of making sure that everything that we're currently working on is getting caught up, so they can handle what we expect to be quite an increase in reports. Children have been home really under the radar since, March of this year, and so reporting has been down because people just weren't seeing children. And so now they're more visible and they're talking to their teachers and their counselors. And so things that perhaps could have happened between March and now, we are certain are going to be getting reported to us. And so we've been talking about how we have to look at those reports and how we have to screen those reports. And if you remember, for Ms. Davis, screening means we have to make a decision based on statute whether or not we can accept it for investigation or not. I plan to go through some training with all of you again and talking about those processes and what all of that means. But we've been doing some discussion with our supervisors and how to really critically look at these reports and when we will have to screen out a report and when we will need to accept those reports for an investigation. Currently, looked at some numbers before the meeting today. We are on track with our numbers from actually last August. We will surpass just a tad, but we expect the influx to really come in September. So that is when children have been in school for a little bit of time, and the mad rush of the beginning of school has kind of settled just a little, and they're started to talk a little bit more, and things are starting to maybe get noticed a little bit more, and so that's when we will likely see an increase of reports. So what that brings me to talk about with our preparations for going back to school, and then in talking with supervisors and looking at how we're going to be screening and how we need to be critical about that, is also how we're going to train and educate the school personnel. So over the past couple years, we have been attending meetings and holding sessions with school counselors, with school social workers, nurses, and last year we also did with principals. So this year that's a little tougher, and so I have been, Robert Semple, who is now the Executive Director of the Student Support Services, and I have been, we're going to be working on a method in which we can start that process again and how that's going to look with COVID and what we'll need to do. So I'll be keeping you guys updated on how we're going to do that. And then also, like I said, hopefully to train some of you about what our processes are. You look like you wanted to say something.
Nope.
No? Okay.
I'm good.
All right. So,
I had something on my mind, but that's okay.
okay. Well, I'm going to move into our statistics. So does anybody have any questions about anything that I've mentioned so far?
Do you ever talk to the teachers about that? Do you ever train them the same way that you do the counselors and the principals? And
We do not do that directly because
Okay.
that would be a lot.
That's a ton of people.
Yeah.
Right.
And so what we typically do is we train the counselors and the social workers in hopes that they go back and take that information back. I have thought about doing some recorded trainings for them to use, and so that's something that I've thought about for this year in particular because
Right.
of COVID.
That's what I was thinking. If you think it's gonna be, if the numbers would be up, maybe
Right.
these teachers need to be reminded to be really paying attention.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. And for everyone to understand, because we have certain guidelines we have to work within, which we'll be talking about that. And so just because we screen out a report, it's not because we necessarily want to do that. It's because we have to do that. And that's what we really focus on. What is it that we, where we can't intervene and where we can? And so I think that's a good educational piece for the teachers too, for them to just understand that.
Yeah.
And to tie on to what she says, and Will's probably getting tired of me saying this, but Zoom is a great tool. You can put 200 or 300 on a time. I mean, I was on a call today, had 312 people on it. You could do it in segments. You could have 2 classes this week and 2 next week, and to get back to where you actually hit each one of those teachers and, offer it up. Hey, we got a Zoom class, Zoom training that's going to be going on, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you guys would like to sit in on it and then, get the schools involved. But it's hard to get all of them in a room together. But when you're working virtually, you can get a pretty good chunk of them. I mean, you may not get them all, but I think you could get a pretty good chunk of them. But,
Right.
I mean, she brings up a good point. We're dependent upon somebody else to get the message to the teacher, and it probably is happening, but maybe it's not happening the way we'd like for it to happen.
Well,
I
and they don't-
more work to teachers, because I
No.
have a daughter who is one, and they
Right.
have a lot. But at the same time, that teacher is more the direct link, especially now because, they're not leaving their classrooms to go to specials.
Right.
Or they're not around PE teachers. They're not out of the classroom. They're not going to the lunchroom.
Right.
Everything is self-contained right
Right.
now. So right now, really, that teacher is the person.
And I think you could do it, you can almost do it in the beginning to see how it went as we're going to offer this. If you'd like to join, here's the way you join. And then let the teachers, if they have time, they can work it into their schedule, work it in their calendar versus
Right.
trying to make everybody, mandatory attend, just offer it. Just a thought.
Yeah.
As one that has just retired from the school system, I would like everybody to know that there is a statute that requires that all employees for the school system receive training about mandatory reporting every year. And now with that new law, they also have to have training on trafficking. And so there is the Safe Schools modules. So every employee has to complete all of those modules, which would tell them about mandatory reporting and also about signs to look for if children are being trafficked. But what DSS has been so great to do in partnering with the student services and also the principals is to also explain and kind of forge that relationship about, we don't always understand when a report is not taken.
Right.
And so they do a great job of explaining when it doesn't meet the statute and what other things can we do and how can the school system also be a protective factor for kids when DSS can't step in. And they've done a fabulous job with that. So if they can do some Zoom, then who can participate is great, but if you can also record them and they can watch them later.
Yeah.
But having that interaction is very helpful, and a lot of our teachers do want that. And our teachers work really closely with student services as well to try to understand it, but I will say DSS has done a great job of trying to strengthen that partnership, and I guess it is a little bit tougher right now.
Yeah. Thank you, though.
I'm just curious, Jill, if, I know, teachers at certain points have, they, whatever you call the things that they
The
have to.
modules?
Yeah, the modules or certain development or whatever. If we were to do something that was, we kind of created, is there a way, I don't know how much they have to do, is there a way that we could get that inserted, that they would have to view that as a part of their development?
I think you could probably ask the human resources folks about whether or not that could be a component that would be required. I don't know if it could be added to those links because that's
Right.
a,
It's a separate.
we purchased that
Yeah.
or they purchased that. I have to remember I don't work for Caldwell County Schools anymore. It's only been a month, so I still say we, but
Yeah.
they do purchase, and it has more modules on it than they're even required to do. It's very useful, and there's all kinds of really helpful information on there, but I don't think there would be a way to have a local component
Right.
inserted, but I do think that they could ask that they watch it.
And
It sounds
it would be interesting if we were able to see what they were
Seeing,
seeing too.
What
That
their
would be-
training is,
that would
what
be
the
interesting.
mandatory reporting. I assume it's really just going through the statute and saying that everyone is a mandatory reporter, that if you
right.
see something, you must say
It's
something.
probably a little generic too, though, because I'm sure this is a national
Right.
company, and it probably doesn't tailor it to each individual state.
Right.
But it does talk about mandatory reporting, and I think it does hit on the legal definitions of neglect, abuse, and dependency. And it does a pretty good job of talking about the different signs, which is helpful, I think, to teachers and anyone. I mean, the cafeteria workers have to see it, the bus drivers have to see it.
Yeah.
Everybody has to watch that piece.
Okay.
See, you've
Well,
already
that's-
made a difference, first meeting.
Well, I'm
didn't
glad
have-
I could share that
If
information.
we hadn't have had her, we'd have had to go hunt for that information, so thank you so much.
Well, I think, we'll take back all of this feedback and be talking about how we can provide some more training to the school system and teachers,
Yeah,
counselors, social workers.
and it goes back to what was said earlier by Chapel, is that we don't want to put more on them than what
Right.
they already got, but, it's
But
almost, my
it's very
first thought is
beneficial.
offer it as a volunteer type process. If you want to take it, here it is, and if you don't, that's fine, but
Yeah.
I would say that a large majority of our teachers would probably take it, even if it was voluntary, given.
Probably
all-
so, I agree.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thank you for that. Do you have any other questions about that piece? And then I'm going to just talk about our statistics for a minute, just
Okay.
really to help Ms. Duffy and Ms. Davis about, just to understand what these numbers are. I can't remember if I went through that last month or not, but I'll do it this month again for your benefit. So if you look at the chart that's on your highlights, these are numbers from July. We're always, obviously referring to the month previous. So our intake, our CPS intake, that number encompasses reports that were called in and maybe screened out, reports that were called in and screened in, but also other, maybe assists from other counties where they perhaps have a report and a parent lives in our county and we need to go out and interview that parent. So those are what we call assists. And so that number encompasses all of that. The CPS assessment line, those are reports that have been screened in that we have accepted for investigation or assessment, depending on what the allegations are, makes the difference there. So assists are just exactly what we were saying. Now, these assists that you see here can be our in-home assists. They can be assist in investigations or assessments. They can be foster care assists. They're just different types of assists for other counties or perhaps assists for other states. And so that's what that line is. Our in-home services, that is what people usually refer to case management or refer to as case management. That is when an investigation or assessment has closed, safety issues have been identified, and a social worker is continuing to work with the family intensely. And so this is number of cases in case management or in-home services. So foster care line, that is foster care, that is children under 18 in the custody of our county. The foster care 18 to 21, that is a program in which a child can voluntarily stay in what is called foster care, but they are legally an adult. They do have a social worker who helps link them up with resources and helps them navigate some independent living and issues that may come up for them. So we currently have 15 in that program, which is a good amount of youth. So our adoptions, that is finalized adoptions for the month. Now, typically, it ranges from probably 0 to 5. The month prior to this, and actually 3 months prior to this, we had several, and that was because our court had kind of gotten delayed because of COVID, and so everything kind of came through at one time. So we were having several. Our foster home licensing, the 32 are general foster homes, and so that just means any children may be placed in those homes. The 14 relative or kinship licensed, that's usually a family who has gotten licensed for a particular relative or a particular child. So that's what those numbers mean. Did anybody have any question about those numbers?
For the, in your foster care licensing, those that are licensed only for that particular child who might be a relative, is that process still the same as it is for a general foster?
It is.
Okay.
It is the same. Now, we do have some that, pre-COVID, we had where we could do maybe one family at a time. They didn't go through the actual MAP classroom setting, but that's changed a little bit now, so.
And then your in-home services, those are the ones that were open for case management just for the month of July?
Yes. Those were, as of the end of July, that's how many were open.
Okay.
And that is families, not children. So that's 20, that's 28 families.
Could be more children in the family.
Right. And foster care, it is by child. So it's counted a little different. In investigation assessments, it's by family. So it looks a little different.
How much of, are you seeing from COVID is affecting the families directly? Are you able to, from losing a job or anything like that that's kind of trickled back to where you go investigate, you look at it and you say, well, I can see that COVID impacted this
We're
family.
starting to see more now.
Okay.
In the beginning, it was like a delayed effect. And so
Right.
we're starting to see more now. We do have several families who, we go out, we work with, and we actually just had a meeting with our CPS unit and our social workers talked about how, they're seeing families affected because they have some issues and some things they need to address, but there's no services for us to refer them. And so we're stuck, and our social workers are very stressed about, well, I need to get these services for this family to help make these children safe, so we don't have to remove these children from their parents, but there's nothing there. It's either virtual or it's non-existent.
Such as, like, give me a.
Well, such as
phrase.
mental health counseling,
Okay.
or such as domestic violence counseling, or
So they're not
support
doing any of
groups.
those trainings right now, really?
They just started back. I know our
Okay.
shelter home, our local shelter home, just started back doing an assessment process. We are actually
Okay.
providing some space for them at the office so that they can complete those assessments and still distance safely, because where they were, it was just too
Right.
close together. And, not being face-to-face, it takes away some of that relationship, rapport building, and it really affects the outcome of these assessments. It also affects the outcome of counseling sessions, support groups. So those type of services, even substance abuse treatment, children's counseling services, a lot of that has been virtual, and that's not quite as effective. I mean, it's all we can do right now. And I commend the people, continuing those services in that way, because it's not only hard for the people who are utilizing the services, but it's hard for the providers too, because they don't want, they don't want to do it that way. But they're doing the best they can, and so, but it is a struggle. It's a struggle for the families. It's a struggle for the social workers. So,
All right,
Any other
anybody got any
questions?
more questions for Kim? As always, great job. Appreciate what you do.
thank you.
Next on our agenda is Adult and Family Support Services highlights. Ms. Martha Hedrick, Economic Services Administrator.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Just want to let you know, I left my checkbook in the car and I've made it out for $22, so if you'll just tell me where to direct it.
Yep. So you're the one responsible for
Supervisors,
that.
we all chipped in and said we would gladly pay that $22. We were very, very ecstatic about
Well, you
that.
should have been.
So I really wanted to go over some updates with you guys, what we're going through. COVID is continuously changing our processes, and we've had some updates here recently. So I'm going to start with our energy program. With Low-Income Energy Assistance Program, which we call LEAP, and that's a yearly check that a client can come in and apply for. That goes to the vendor, and it is applied toward their heating source for that year. And people start applying for that December 1st if you have someone 60 or older in the home. And then January 1st, it's open to the general public. So what they're going to try to do this year is something a little different. They're going to run a report on November 1st of all the cases that we had approved this past fiscal year. And all of our clients that are 60 plus are going to be sent something in the mail stating, you received this service last year. Please go through this and see if anything has changed. And if it has, send it back to your local office. And what we'll do is go in the system and update that information. So those clients will not have to come into the office this year. And the check will automatically be resent out to the vendor if there's been no change. So previously our amounts had been $200, $300 or $400 to vendors. It's going to be the same amounts as it was last year, which is $300, $400, and $500. So it'll be $300 if you heat by wood, $400 if you heat by any type of fuel, oil, kerosene, gas, and $500 if you heat with electric. Our crisis intervention program, which we call SIP, is anybody that is in some type of health-related crisis where they need heating or cooling assistance to be able to alleviate their situation that they're in. They're actually working on, I know we've talked several times before about our online application process, which is called North Carolina ePass. Currently, you apply for Medicaid or food and nutrition services, which most people call food stamps, online. They're actually looking at piggybacking onto that ePass program and making it where people can apply for the energy programs using the ePass application this year as well. So that's going to be a tremendous help for our staff, because normally the first day of December and the first day of January, we normally have a mass gathering outside the building. They're waiting, ready to come in and apply for those services and make sure that, they get in line early so they're not sitting with us all day long. Typically, our first days, just for those programs, we're averaging 100 to 125 clients per day. So those amount of people that are either going to be pre-approved and not have to apply this year or be able to do it online is going to make a significant difference for our workers this year. In regards to Medicaid, we're still continuing with COVID policy that had been updated. And pretty much the change in that is we're still doing online applications, and we're using a lot more of what they call the client attestation. So we're not needing to require as many verifications when we are doing reviews or applications for clients. If they give us a statement of how much is in their bank account and it meets the income or resource guideline, we're able to take that statement and move on with their paperwork instead of requesting a tangible verification for the file. So, our backlogs of pending applications and recertifications for those programs have pretty much dwindled away. We've been able to get a lot of those cases taken care of. And they have actually approved a new type of Medicaid, which is going to be called COVID Medicaid. We're getting ready to do training on that at the end of this week. So anybody that currently has Medicaid, or for, I know your most popular type of Medicaid, we talk about the family planning program, they're going to add a piece onto that Medicaid. So if anyone goes to get COVID tested, Medicaid will be billed for it, and they're not going to have to pay out of pocket. So anybody that's currently receiving Medicaid service will have that added on, which is going to be mostly for our family planning because it would have been covered under normal Medicaid. And then anybody that doesn't have insurance, they're going to be asked if they want to apply for that COVID Medicaid when they go to get tested. And the state is actually going to be processing all those applications for counties. So our workers are not going to have to do all of those extra applications. There will be times that we're going to have to pass paperwork applications to the state or maybe update addresses and information in the system, but we will not be responsible for processing all those applications, which we are very, very grateful for.
Yeah, that's a good thing, but it's also, I'm a little hesitant to let the state have anything. They have a tendency to complicate matters, but hopefully it'll go smooth.
True. We thought the same thing, but we're going in with positive high
Yeah,
hopes.
I agree. It's all you can do.
So for food nutrition services, which most people know is the food stamp program, starting September 1st, our workers go back to mandatory interviews with all of our clients. During the state of emergency, the last few months, it's been that we don't have to interview the clients for their food stamp application unless the information seems questionable or maybe there was portions of the application that were not filled out or completed correctly. So starting September 1st, we have to go back to interview. You don't have to come into the office. It does not have to be face-to-face. We can do it over the telephone. We can do it over a meeting virtually. We're keeping the options very much open there. And they've also just added on a new piece of policy that is going to help tremendously, where we can interview the client over the phone, fill out the application for them, and take their statement for signature. Because it used to be we would fill out everything for them on the phone. If maybe they were illiterate or had no transportation, we would have to mail it to them, get a signature, wait for it to come back, and then process it with the date that we received it signed. So the client lost all of those benefits in between the days of us mailing it and us receiving it back signed. So with this new piece of policy that started, we're going to be able to give the clients benefits from the day that we speak to them over the phone and accept their verbal signature over the phone. So that's going to be a huge thing for us.
How will we manage the fraud side of that?
It's something that has been talked about.
And the reason I say that, I don't mean to cut you off, but
Fine.
we're seeing a great deal, a lot more fraud in the virtual world than we were in the physical world. I mean, we're experiencing it where I work. I mean, our fraud is just skyrocketed. Because we have to be careful from a virtual side. We don't necessarily touch and feel the person, where physical, we can see him get a driver's license, and we're seeing a large amount of fraudulent driver's license in the virtual world.
Oh, yeah.
So I guess I just asked the question is how we're going to control the fraud there.
We're going to be having a meeting next week to discuss a little bit more in depth of in-house what we're looking at, but there is particular pieces of the policy where there's particular wording that has to be put in on the case to kind of back up the county side for the worker. And there's particular ways that the paperwork has to be completed if you are going to use that process. In-house, we're kind of discussing some different ways that we can try to approach it, where we can go even further beyond the scope of what the state is asking us and
Now you're
putting
talking.
even more on our worker side. Just for the simple fact of, we have seen an increase since all of this has happened with program integrity, in the amount of cases we've had coming to us for suspected IPVs for fraud. And for that program, we want our numbers to go down and not up.
Right.
So we're looking at, we started talking, but we're officially meeting next week to say, what else can we do in-house along with this state policy? We're talking about further, more in-depth interview questions beyond what the state is asking of us, a documentation template to go along with the template that we already have in place for more detailed information that would be laid out in case the record is pulled for audit purposes. So it's something that we have discussed, and we're hoping to kind of finalize some things next week.
And I think one other thing, excuse me, to add to that is, even though, there will be certain things that we're able to take over the phone and take people's statement, everything we do, when we take that individual's information and we run it through our systems, it's still gonna hit all of the other normal systems that it's gonna go into and confirm whether or not does this information match what other employment systems, other types of verifications, is everything still matching what it should match, in terms of that individual and who they are, and then just all of those types of things. So it will still flow through those systems, and if something, something pops out that doesn't look right, then we're still gonna be checking into, looking at those aspects as well, so.
And we've also talked about, since we've had the time to kind of catch up on things, working with our workers on slowing down currently and setting the slower pace, so that we're making sure all of those things are thoroughly being checked. We do get the results back, but we want to make sure the worker's taking the time to properly look over it and make sure that the information matches, and check to see if the client's currently receiving services in any other program, and does that information match what they've currently told us. So slowing down has been our biggest subject that we've been talking about on that, but adding in some additional pieces as well too.
Yeah, because really, the fraud piece of it is, it's gotten to be a little overwhelming, quite honestly. These fraudsters are getting better and better, and, it's not as much about the information as it is making sure that the person you're talking to is actually the person that's applying for the,
Yeah,
that they are who they say they are.
we've talked about that
It's
as
hard
well.
to do that when you can't see them.
Very much so.
Yep.
So for the food nutrition service program, our reviews for that program have been auto-approved for the last several months, and the USDA did not approve an extension for us for that for the month of September. So recertifications will start being mailed back out to our clients. They'll actually have been mailed out this week. So people will not be automatically approved. So if they want to continue service, they'll have to complete the paperwork and send it back into us, or bring it by the office and drop it off. And our workers will start reapproving all of those cases effective September 1st.
Will, or anybody, has Lucas spoken to you guys about putting some of these applications online? I know he and I had a conversation a couple weeks ago, and I asked him to reach out to you about some of the forms and applications that you guys have to mail out, and they mail it back and things like that. Because COVID money should pay for us to change our system in the county side to where a client can go online, fill that information out, hit submit, and it pops on the other end. So has that come up?
He and I haven't, we've emailed back and forth about some bits and pieces of that, but I know, and I don't know if you're getting ready to talk about some of the things that are already available.
Okay.
Well, first, on our webpage, we do have the applications for Childcare, food nutrition services, and Medicaid. And then there is the new last update in NC Fast, where if a client applies using the North Carolina ePass application, they have access to what is called the client portal. And we can actually relay information back and forth to the client if they apply online, and we can have an open dialogue communication with them and let them know exactly what we're needing to complete the application. We can send them the forms through their portal. They can complete them, scan them, and send them back to us through the portal. That's been extremely helpful, especially for Medicaid. And we've also tried to get as tech savvy as we can with some of our clients, where we're telling them where they can go online with some of our forms and can Google them and print them off and provide them to us. The one downfall of NC Fast is a lot of those forms that we need, especially for FNS and Medicaid, are built into the system. So it used to be we could go online and put in, I want to Google a DSS 8650, which is a request for information form. You can't do that anymore. You can pull the form and it's there, but if it's not the form from NC Fast, you're dinged on that at your audit. So that has kind of been a negative impact for us, but for any of the paperwork that we can get away with, we're trying to send it any direction in any way we can.
Good.
And just a little bit on childcare, we have been busy enrolling children from wraparound. That's been a little bit of a challenge this year because, we've had several of the facilities shut down, children relocated to different places. And then you have some that, might just do morning, some that might be staying a complete day, some that do morning and afternoon, some that's just afternoon. So our daycare supervisor and those workers have been, constantly going back and forth with wraparound and the director, trying to get as many enrolled as we possibly can. And also, there's been a challenge of how to code all of this information in the system. Normally, we rely back on the state whenever there's a change to tell us how we code this information to make sure that it's in for the correct payment. But since every county has different options for the way your children can go to school, there can be no set coding for the entire state. So our workers are really just having to put in a lot of in-depth documentation on their cases, explaining why we have coded this case a particular way to make sure that it's going to pay out properly. They have done a phenomenal job with keeping up with the phone calls and the clients coming in. They've even went to some of the open enrollment events at Wraparound to go ahead and take DSS applications for childcare subsidy while they were there applying for Wraparound. So I do commend them for all that extra work they've been doing right now. And really the issue that we're hitting right now with childcare is we don't have enough facilities. We have several families calling, and everybody is not just, I need daycare for this week. It's a specific need because every child's need right now is truly different due to COVID and how they're going to school. And we don't have enough openings for school-age children. So we're constantly keeping a list updated in our office of who has an opening and for what age group, so that we can contact people and go back and forth and make sure we're keeping our families updated of what's available and what's not. We're still without a waiting list, so as soon as those people come in, we're working on finding them an opening, getting the application keyed and taken care of, and getting that child placed. But that has been a huge hurdle for us, especially the last month, in families preparing to have their kids go back to school.
So if there's anybody out there who's interested in opening up a daycare center
You cannot
specifically in
pick
the
more of a
school age.
prime time.
Yeah, especially the school age kids now's the
Absolutely.
perfect time to do that, so. Did we lose any centers through this summer? Did we have any closed permanently? Do
We
know?
had some closed temporarily, but none permanently.
Okay, so are they all open back up now?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Do you have any other questions for me?
I'm good. Anybody got any questions? All right, it's fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha, appreciate it, good job. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. Our next board meeting will be on Tuesday, September 29th at 5 o'clock here in the same location, the Out in East Orange building. And we encourage you guys to, anybody out listening from television tonight, we encourage you to come out and spend some time with us and see what's going on with our meetings. These folks do an incredible job, and again, I know I thank you, but I can't thank you enough. Thank you for all you do, and sometimes we forget the importance of the services that you provide, and we just have to do a better job of continuing to educate the public on what you guys do out there. So thank you again, and if anybody got anything they want to say before we adjourn? If not, I will entertain a motion that we adjourn our meeting this evening.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned.
Let's